This episode of Q Point Podcast is pre-recorded, produced and sponsored by Karina Quirk, broker at Next Home Experience.
Different views.
I know your story.
From different choose.
Incredible job.
He's David Quirk.
You brought it up.
And she's Karina Quirk.
Imagine.
This is
Q Point.
Joining us now in studio is independent candidate for Maine State Senate District 9, Steve Carey. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you.
So what motivated you to run for Maine Senate, which will be for Bangor, Hermon?
Kind of a little bit of a long story. I kind of shortened up real quick. There's 3 or 4 series of events that really led me to this. And I was in the retail business 40 years, but I started in 2020 as a volunteer driver for Penquist. I did some Ubering. I worked for Baxter Park. I did a number of very enjoyable positions, but it allowed me a chance, 5 to 6 years of really just listening to a lot of people, observing, reading, fact-checking, listening to a lot of podcasts, a lot of talk radio, and just really watching the city of Bangor in the state of Maine. And February of 2025, I was in Florida down with my wife and I. We were down there for a couple of months. And I kind of laid out a spreadsheet, and I listed everything that I could measure, and I used 2019 as a base point, and I did year-ending 2024. And if you can measure it, I listed it. Housing costs, taxes, energy rates, education scores, crime, homelessness, DHS incidents. If you can measure it, I laid it out. And I'm sure my 4 boys and my wife amongst themselves were thinking their father's got to play more golf or something. He's got to get a life. But it's not like 1/3 get better, 1/3 stay the same. It was all in the wrong direction. And then I did the same thing in 2025. And the numbers, they just weren't good. And numbers don't lie. So that was troubling me. I'm watching, I'm sitting back. Everybody else is sitting kind of watching as things are developing. And then in September of 2025, which is actually my birthday on September 10th, and I go up north, I get a little model hunt camp way in the woods, and my wife appeases me once a year to go up there on my birthday, which I appreciate. But on that day, we were up there, and that's the day that they assassinated Charlie Kirk. So I had listened to Charlie Kirk up here in Bangor maybe 6 or 8 years ago. And from that time forward, I'd watch a lot of podcasts, listen to a lot of interviews, watch them a lot, listen to them a lot. And after that incident, the hate, the vitriol, and the misinformation that was coming out was mind-blowing to me. How could so many people take such glee in a man assassinated like that? So then I was listening to my pastor shortly after that, and he made a statement. He says, people need to kind of get off the sidelines and stand up for your beliefs. So that was kind of uneasy 3 or 4 months. I was kind of listening to that. I was kind of struggling with it. I mean, I had all plans. There was a small business that I was going to start this summer up here. I was excited about that. But then in February, somebody approached me about this Senate seat, which I had never, ever thought about politics. Never been involved in it. But I do believe God works in different ways. And I have spent 5 or 6 years just watching, listening, reading. And I thought about it. Quite frankly, I prayed about it over a week. And I made a decision. I just strongly feel that there's things, a change that we need. And I can't put it any better. I just disagree with an awful lot of policies that are going on, both locally and in the state. And that's why I'm doing this. I hope that November 4th, we wake up and we say, you know what? 60% of the people voted. We can say, hey, so be it. The majority spoke. Move on. But the last election, it was 47% statewide. It was 41% in Bangor in the last off-cycle election. At least encourage everybody to vote. They have a civic duty to vote. We never ask them who they vote for. We never tell them who to vote for if you're an employer or leader or organization. But you can ask your folks to vote. Let them know that, early voting starts October 5th. So that's my hope as I go through every day. I'm really encouraging people to get registered, vote, vet myself, vet my opponent, as you do anywhere, and vote with those that you feel align with your values. But we just want to feel comfortable that, by God, the majority spoke, and then so be it. Why I'm here today is I just feel strongly that there's some change that need to be done.
So you worked here in town at the Sears and Roebuck store for a few years. Is that correct?
I did. I grew up in Arlington, went to Brewer, then I went to University of Maine, but I started in the downtown Sears store. And actually, my first job for the first week was playing Winnie the Pooh in a back-to-school promotion at downtown store with no air conditioning. So that was my first job. And then I worked various departments while I went to University of Maine. Ended up getting out of University of Maine. My first full-time job was a service advisor in the back shop at the new mall. I was doing that, and then I had a lady come in to have a snow tire changeover and an oil change. And of course, as a service advisor, back shop, you just want to provide the best service you can, right? And 43 years later, I'm still trying to do that. That was my wife. She'd come in, and we met there and worked in various departments, worked in a number of stores, traveled to a lot of stores with Sears, running automotives for them district-wide, running stores with them district-wide, a number of store manager assignments in New York and Maryland. Yeah, it was a career that I really enjoyed. I love the retail business. It really allowed me to raise my family, and it was great. That's my Sears history, and got done with them in 2012. And then my wife and I got a pizza business off the ground, Pompeii Pizza down the waterfront. After that, I went to work with VIP Tires and Service, traveling stores and overseeing stores for them. John Quirk, who owns that company, terrific man. I think very highly of him and his leadership, and did that for another few years.
Different Quirk.
Different Quirk.
Different
That's
Quirk.
exactly right. Yeah, from Waterfront, Mass.
Well, I certainly remember Pompeii Pizza. Oh my gosh, that was so good.
It was, yeah. It was fun. We started in 2013, so we were the first food truck down there, over there on the lawn. And so it was really neat, to go through the Bangor Savings Bank expansion. Alice Gray, he was down there really with porta potties, fold-up chairs, and a stage, and what that's transformed in today. And I was actually down there this morning. I stopped down there because I really give Alice Gray and his team an awful lot of credit of what they've done with that. And there's nothing bigger in Bangor as far as bringing in crowds. It's really, and the venue itself obviously is very nice. I give them a lot of credit for sticking with it. They went through a lot initially when they're getting that off the ground, and it's been great for Bangor.
So what issue concerns you the most going into this election?
Well, I think we have the local issues that we have here in Bangor and Hermon. If you talk to 20 people in the streets of Bangor right now, 19 or 20, if not 20 out of 20, could test the homeless situation. It's an issue that needs to be addressed. And I realize it's not an easy issue to fix. I know it's complicated. I know everybody has a story and there's dynamics between each one. But there's a number of things that we can do to really help that situation. The genie is definitely out of the bottle. They are coming from all over. I've done a lot of Ubering around this city. It's a job, quite frankly, and I haven't done much since I started this in May. And again, quite frankly, I missed it. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. And as I told somebody the other day, there ought to be an Uber driver in Bangor for a week. Because when I'd go out, it'd be 4 or 5 in the morning. When I'd go out, you got to drive around this city 5 o'clock in the morning and tell me what you see. You see a lot. And I think there's a number of things on the homeless. First and foremost, we need to be honest with ourselves of what the numbers are. I read something yesterday that they just came out with a number from that point in time that they do this count in January, the homeless. And I saw it just printed yesterday. And it said Penobscot and Penobscot County has 600 homeless in the two counties. I'm just telling you, my opinion is it's not even close to being accurate. And I make that statement based on the amount of people I see new. I have a hard time remembering names, but you can't forget faces. And I see new people every day that come. And January is not the time to count it anyways. So that count is wrong. So we need to be accurate with ourselves as far as the count. We have a system in place now that Bangor does, HMIS, a Homeless Management Information System, that is intended to input information of a homeless individual there, their name, their last known address, their phone number, maybe a contact family member, and then maybe an assessment initially, whether it's purely financial, whether it's mental health issue, or it's a drug issue, or a combination of those two. That's really kind of issues. We need to put some teeth behind that. It's not being used. If there's one system that we should have an iPad or laptop that we should be able to take out into the field to keep that information accurate, that would be the issue, and we don't. So a first responder or somebody at either Bangor Shelter or Hope House, they have to manually enter that information in. It's not working. So we got to be accurate with the count. We need to have a log. We need to know so we can follow through somebody that we talk with on Tuesday so we can designate what services we think they should be referred to. We got to get a handle on the management of the numbers. I do think that a couple of things to start. The overnight camping, the camping in public properties, the panhandling. I think those laws, I think they need to be tightened up or enforced with the current ones, which has not been. I do think all monies that come into this city for homelessness, you need to have somebody in charge of that money. It can't be in various different spots. You try to find out the money that come into Penobscot County and Bangor for homelessness is very difficult to pin that amount down. It's just fact. Why is Angus King giving $2 million to a nonprofit in Bangor to build 5 or 6 homes maybe next year? We all know that $2 million is going to have zero impact on the homeless situation in Bangor. That's just a fact. We do know there's a mental health issue. We know Dorothy Dix at 40% capacity up there. We know that needs to be funded. We know there's some individuals that should not be on the street. They're a danger to themselves. They're a danger to the public. I walk the waterfront in Bangor a lot. And I walk it to walk, but I walk it, quite frankly, to observe. I make that 2-mile loop down through there to see who's down there differently. And I was at the council meeting on Monday. The very first person who spoke, young lady, did a very good job speaking of a particular situation that this lady had that led her to homelessness. And that situation, in today's society, we should be able to help that lady for that situation. So we have those that a variety of financial issues causes them to be homeless. We should be able to help. We have one side there's a real true mental health issue. Then we have a majority that's driven by the drug issue. And I may be in the minority in this. I don't know. But I have very strong opinions of that whole way that we are going after the drug issue. And as long as we are doing the whole substance abuse disorder, and we treat it that way, we're not going to get a handle on the homeless situation. And I don't know why we've just continued to let the pharmaceutical companies influence the medical industry, the mental health industry, and they influence us to the tune that we've created this perpetual patienthood. And I just don't agree with how we look at this drug issue. I had 4 boys. I had one that contracted a life-threatening leukemia and almost lost him. I saw the pain and agony went through it. My wife went through all of this, and anybody's been through that knows. I had another son that was a 10-year heroin addict. We almost lost him twice. The pain, the agony that put through, and everybody's been there, or a family member knows how devastating it is. We love them both. By the grace of God, they're doing well today. But there's a big difference. One had a disease that he could not control, and one made choices. And as long as we treat my son's heroin issue as a disease, instead of taking responsibility and making him a victim, I think we need a whole about face on that. And I have not watched, and I did not go to the opiate thing that was at Cross Center yesterday. I've seen the last 2. The last shoe was in Augusta. And there was an awful lot of patting on the back. And I know that people it's in their heart that they want to help people. But the answer isn't more methadone clinics. The answer is not increasing Suboxone. There comes a time that compassion comes with looking at somebody and saying, you've got to take your life back. You've got to take your life back. And why should the rest of society pay because you have an opiate addiction or you have a drug addiction? There's all kinds of vices out there that we can blame it on this or that. And I have compassion. I do. But we're failing the test. We're failing the test as it comes to the drug issue, and it's infesting the city, and it doesn't need to be that way. I've been involved with my son in Calvary Residential Discipleship down there in Orrington, so I thought I was close with it. And then when I got done reaching, I started driving for Penquist, and I started driving. You realize, wow, the communities are running back and forth. And I take a very hard stance. Just because you are addicted to opiates does not mean that you get free treatment, free transportation, free SNAP benefits, and Maine care because you have an addiction issue. I just don't think that's the way to go. I think you got a vice. You need to take ownership of your vice.
So your son, you said, is doing well. He's recovered. You've been through this. How did he recover?
He's doing great. He's been 10 years now. He went through the Calvary Residential Discipleship Program down in Orrington, and he turned his life over to God, to Jesus, and let that be his focus. Took his focus off his vice and went through that program, and he's doing absolutely terrific. He stayed on to go through the ministry program down there in Orrington and has opened up his own Calvary Chapel down in Greater Portland. He's doing great. And so many have come through that program. And again, I've asked many people when we get into this discussion about that, I says, don't take my word for it. Look it up on your phone, whichever AI you use to fact check things. I asked the question, what is the number one addiction treatment program in Maine? And it will come back like it did on mine, Calvary Residential Discipleship in Orrington, which is a plus 70% success rate. And they gauge that by being 12 months clean. The testimonies are just awesome, and there's so many.
So what are your thoughts on the needle program?
The needle program, if I controlled it, I'd stop it tomorrow. I think anybody in that world, been in that world, or a family member in that world would tell you it's the craziest thing going on. And I've been around that world for quite some time. That is not the answer. And I would encourage anybody to speak with those that are in the world or been in that world. And I've had dozens and dozens of them shake their head and go, what is going on? You have some suppliers, you have some distributors, you have other people in there, but that is not the answer. It's not the answer.
So obviously, Penobscot County is overdue for a jail, and it certainly needs some funding for that. What's your thought on that process?
I think that is a must in this county. I actually went back maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. I went and spoke with Sheriff Morton, and we set up a time where I could bring 10 individuals into that jail, and we did. And I would encourage anybody to do it. I'm going to try to do it again. I'm going to try to bring 10 people in that do not want it, so they can go through and see. That jail, I think, was built in 1864. And as Sheriff Morton points out, it's not the weekend OUIers and the night hunters that are in there now. It's a different era. And I typically lean very strong on the conservative side of spending, but that, to me, that is so necessary for not just safety of our personnel down there, but for proper treatment of our inmates. So I really hope, again, people get out and vote. It's going to be on the referendum this November to move it out of the city seat. They get the location picked up in Hampden, and Sheriff Morton went and visited when he was out at a sheriff's meeting at Protégé new state-of-the-art jail format that was much less expensive than what the initial cost had done. So it is needed.
Well, speaking of a tour, I also took a tour with Sheriff Morton. So there is a recording on Q Point Podcast Facebook page if anybody wants to look at it. If you're not able to take a tour, it's a 12-minute video, and I think it really does show all the way through, and he discusses it in detail. So what else are you focusing on in your campaign?
The financial management of our funds. I think everything starts with that. You got to be kind of sound financially. And I think there's a number of things we've got to look at financially. There was a lot of talk last year about the new budget. It was started at 11.3 versus 6.8 on the last budget. And a lot of concerns about that increase in 11.3 went to 11.6, and now it's over that. And I was just looking yesterday, and I got to dig into it a little bit. It said the 2027 projected it could be close to 14. It seems like we have kind of a runaway train as it relates to the spending. And you heard back on one of your podcasts, listen to that Dale Dowdy about the DOT funding is a $400 million shortfall. So there's a lot of ripple effects that are going on. I guess the thing that concerns me that I think Augusta needs to work together on is a lack of transparency on a lot of the spending. We've had major increases in spending, and this doesn't take into account, we had a lot of money during the COVID thing, we had $10 billion. They went somewhere, but we got to be transparent on where this funds are going. I think we have some opportunity there. We saw the audit last year. We saw that there's a lot of opportunities there in terms of the no-bid contracts, and there was just seemed to be I don't know how else to say it, corruption that was going on down there. We have that kind of money that just laid out there. So there's some real concerns on the spending. That obviously leads itself into the affordability issues of taxes. There's a real rumbling going on, as they should be, on the tax increases that's going on, and that's directly related, obviously, to the spending piece. We're now top 5 in overall tax burden. That's the concern, individually and with businesses. Those are important issues. Education reform that's needed in this state is dramatic. The financial piece, you got to have your house in order there. But this educational reform is so needed in this state. There is a culture of silence going on in the education world right now, because I think everybody knows we got some major challenges. I was with the folks yesterday, and I made the statement. I said, the politicians, the media, and the educators that have allowed this issue of men and girls sports to overtake the education department ought to be ashamed of themselves, while our scores plummet. The country scores haven't been good relative to the industrialized world, but Maine in particular has tanked. And I asked my son the other day, go in and ask your superintendent, track him down, and the principal, why have not been any meetings? Why is there no communication about the academic performance of the students? I mean, years ago, there was a time that you'd come in the gymnasium. They'd talk about how the students were doing. They don't anymore. There's a culture of silence. They're trying to smoke screen it with some other things, but we have some major issues with the education. And I just think it needs a 360 because we're not focusing on the things that we should be focused on in the education world. That's just a fact.
So besides education, do you have a plan for energy?
Yeah, our electrical rates are number 3 overall. We know that this renewable portfolio standard that we set 2040 to be 100% on renewables, it's unrealistic standard. We're forcing things. Again, I think we're going to be very careful about politicians making energy decisions and policies. I have no experience in energy. I turn on a thermostat, right? I'm not so sure we are the ones that should be making decisions on probably the most complicated energy grid. And obviously, our policies have driven up our cost. Unbelievable. Third highest now. Solar subsidies and that whole thing. Just don't agree with it. You can go from Kittery to Jacksonville, Florida. Then you can go from Bangor to Kittery. You're going to see more solar fields on I-95 from Bangor to Kittery than you are from Kittery to Jacksonville if you take the I-95 route. I come from a time when You might remember Dave Giroux, the great basketball player, right? He had the sign places, South Brewer. He made the signs because he put signs on the interstate. Then they put a law in effect, no more billboards. His business shut down on a dime because that was his business. So we got rid of all the billboards, but now we got all these community solar fields, and it's a lot of bad policy that's driving up these electrical costs. I've talked to dozens and dozens of business owners. The taxes and the energy costs, top 2 out of 3 issues with most.
So I noticed on your Facebook page, you are celebrating a business every day. Is that what you're doing?
I did initially to force myself out to talk to people, to listen to business owners, to hear concerns. So I started June 6th, Ricky Craven's kickoff out there, to November 3rd, is exactly 150 days. So I said, I'll take 150 days and I'll talk to 150 business owners. But this thing has turned out to be the inspiration, motivation, admiration. Some of these stories have just been unbelievable, some of the success stories and the people involved in these small businesses that we have around the greater Bangor area. Just this week alone, I'm at Central Maine Highway with Brian Oliver. Just quality business owner, quality family man, quality community guy, just great operation. Him and his wife run over there. And we did Chase's Restaurant this week. Talk about a small family-run business, a husband, wife, the son, the daughter. It's hard work. They're dealing with a lot. So it's been very inspirational for me. Sunnyside Forest over there in Buck Street. You know Richard?
Yes.
Well, I've driven by him 1,000 times. This is like one of the initial. I got talking to him. You know how long he's been working there? 70 years. He started when he was 15. He's been there 70 years.
Wow.
His partner, Ingrid, came in to buy flowers 40 years ago, never left. She opened up Ingrid's gift shop. It's unbelievable. So it's given me a great appreciation for what so many of these folks do, what they deal with. We are a very heavy state as it relates to small business. 55% of our employees in this state are by small business. And the elected politicians and the unelected politicians in these local cities, they need to be so passionate about helping small businesses. There's enough challenges running small businesses. There's a lot there. As supporting states and supporting Augusta, we need to support small business. We need them. We need to help them. But there are so many great stories out there. I don't know if you ever saw the one about the window tinting. Scott Sun Control?
Yes.
He worked at Village Subaru.
He certainly did.
Look, I'm an Uber driver. I thought I knew every street there was in Bangor. It said he did Stone Street. The only Stone Street I knew was in Brewer. Right? I didn't know there was over there.
Only a few houses on that street.
Right? So I go in there and talk with him. And his story is unbelievable. He comes down from the county. He works for Knight's Auto. And he goes to Village Subaru. And he's over there with you, Village Subaru, and he sees these cars come up from Florida. There's window tinting. He said, wow, that's kind of cool. That's kind of neat. Goes down the library, because he has to go down the library. That's what you did. Read about it, found out there's 3 different companies that did it, one being 3M. So he did it part-time. Well, he stayed on, right, with Village Subaru for 4 years. He's been doing it on his own for 34 years, just window tinting, no website, just word of mouth, reputation, raised his family. They saw the comments on that post, very, very well thought of. What a great story. And there's so many like that.
When you're out there talking to these businesses, do you find them complaining about all the regulations and the mandates that they have on the businesses?
I do. It's taxes, it's electrical rate, and it's regulation. There is a very strong sentiment that they are in a non-business friendly environment here. There's no question. And I won't mention the name. One of the other things that started me on this prior to June 6th was a local businessman that I did not know, but a friend of mine did. And I went and met that individual. And this is what I call a large small business in this area. Been around a long time with multiple businesses, so it was a large small business. But the frustration that was on his face and in his voice talk, I said, wow. So that kind of triggered me to say, I want to get out and I got to talk to more. And I've talked to enough now that it's not a one-off. There's a sentiment. And, the numbers that you pull, if you AI these reports that are out there, the reporting tells you that we're in the top 10 of non-business friendly states. So, yes, to answer your question, yeah, it's a strong sentiment.
So as we wrap up, what separates you from your opponent?
I guess to begin with, if somebody was not really following any politics and didn't know either one of us, my opponent or myself, it'd probably take really 30 seconds to really determine which way you're going to go. There's stark differences on how we see how the state is being run. I can give you a few examples that I would vote differently on things. LD 233, which supported men and women's sports. I am a hard stop on that. It's no. As I stated earlier, I think that some educators and politicians and some of the media ought to be ashamed of themselves on making that the top narrative in our education field while the academic performance plummeted. That's the difference. I would say LD 1971, which supports limiting cooperation between ICE and local authorities. I feel the same way. I think I would have gone completely opposite. I think we need to have cooperation with all our law enforcement. And I think what's been said, especially even recently, locally and at the state level, demeaning complete organizations of men and women that are trying to do what's required of them per federal law is wrong. I think LD 1986, another area, supported net energy billing and preserves the subsidies for solar companies. I would have been absolutely no on that. LDA 94 is supported paid family medical leave expansion. I've gone around and talked to numerous businesses on that. That is a major issue with small businesses today. That have been known. LD 1159 is another one. Supported needle giveaway policies. Hard stop no on that. I think that is a program that should be stopped immediately. LD 1703, again, supported eliminating cash bail in many Class E crimes. It takes a very progressive stand on criminal justice. I disagree with that. And I could go on. There is a number of policies and bills that I disagree with. We've had 32 tax or fee increases during this last administration. My opponent was a yay on every one of them, while also declining giving a tax exemption on tips, overtime, car loans, and Social Security exemptions. I don't quite understand that. We just want to ensure everybody gets out, registered to vote, they plan to vote, vet your candidate, so we can wake up November 4th and we got 60% of our eligible voters voted. We can say a majority voted, but there's no doubt in my mind we need a drastic change with a high sense of urgency, both at the city level and at the state level. We need political change. And as much as I'd like locally folks to vote for me, for Bangor and Hermon, there are 3 city council seats that come up in November election. And those individuals impact all of our lives. And we just need everybody to be involved in it so we can have the drastic change with a high sense of urgency that we need.
What would you like to say to the voters of Bangor and Hermon?
Please go out on my Facebook page. My contact information is right there. And both my email, Facebook, phone number. And as I've done a number of times, if there's a group of 1, a group of 10, or however many, whether it wants to be a neighborhood group, organization group, please reach out. I would love the opportunity, and you can ask me any questions you want, and I'll share with you what my thoughts are, opinions are, and any actions that I would want to take to that issue that you bring up. I would encourage everybody to get involved, vet your candidate, get registered, vote, and challenge us. Our focus locally needs to be on local. We need to be focused on Bangor, Hermon, and what comes out of Augusta. And I would encourage you to challenge me on any issues that you want to discuss.
And what is your Facebook page?
Carey for Senate. C-A-R-E-Y. Carey for Senate.
Independent candidate for Maine State Senate District 9, Steve Carey. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming in. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Q Point.
Follow us at qpointpodcast.com or on your favorite streaming app.
Q Point Podcast invites guests and candidates from all parties to join the conversation. The views, information, opinions, and comments expressed during this program do not necessarily represent those of the host, Q Point Podcast, associates, affiliates, and CQRE LLC.
Catch every episode at qpointpodcast.com or wherever you stream. Tune in and tell your friends.